Luke 19:27. Bring here those enemies of mine who do not want me to reign over them, and slay them before me. Luke, New King James Version, whatever. I've been wanting to do a few of these videos for a while, but I didn't want to get too much into the Bible because I just feel like it's just not really my thing. I mean, I do know a lot about the eschatology concerning the Bible, but at least I think I know. According to some, or most Christians, I'm wrong, of course, but of course this is Jesus here saying that, and of course the text sounds very, doesn't sound very nice. I wanted to get into this because there's been growing amongst this dying truth movement. Being serious, I basically think, the truth movement's practically dead at this point. I think it never was really alive except for a very small, and I mean small, tiny number of people who might have been real and legitimate in trying to find the truth regarding this puzzling, evil chess game that these elitist people are playing on us. But this modern truth movement that's practically, non-existent anymore, it's been growing within it is this sort of a whole new kind of, not a whole new, it's nothing new at all, change my words, but I should say, at least within the truth movement, there's this growing kind of, there's this kind of cult thing going on where people are just overly obsessing on Jews and Christian Bible and stuff, as if that's the New World Order agenda. You got guys like Adam Green, No More News. There's this guy on YouTube. Well, he used to be on Renegade Broadcasting for a while and a few other places, whatever, but he's been at it for a while. Charles Giuliani, and don't get me wrong, I like a lot of what these guys, put out. I think they do expose a lot of truth, but one of the things I've been noticing is kind of an issue with me that I've been wanting to express to them is their over obsession on the anti-Bible rants, and I'll explain why I see that as a problem. You see, what's really going on from where my research takes me is that you have these elitist secret societies, and their plan to bring the world, however means they can get it, into some kind of a new world order where it's sort of based on the mystery school religion, a humanistic view of the world where the world has given up their religion. Basically, John Lennon's Imagine, but what's left out of the song is a benevolent rulership of the adepts of the mystery schools. That's what basically is left out of that song. Of course it is, because it's just deception. But don't get me wrong, these. So that's what I see as the. That's what my research has led me into focusing on, is this group of people, because they've infiltrated all levels of society, financial, everything from the bottom, from the top to the bottom. I mean, they've made sure over the last centuries of infiltrating all levels of society to bring the society wherever they want to bring it to, but through the use of clever deception, using the arts and entertainment, using sneaky game of economics and all that other shebang, whatever. So that's what, I'm pretty convinced of is the real agenda, and that's the real agenda to be focused on. Their religion is focused on, man is centered around humanity evolving into a godhood, where they merge with you see you see that with the transhumanist movements and this move to merge with technology. That's basically where, they don't believe in Jehovah or Yahweh. They don't. And I'm getting into this real quick before I get into getting you guys to understand what the writers of the New Testament meant with this verse. I'm getting to this because I'm trying to get people to understand why it's counterproductive to obsessively attack the Bible and think that you're fighting the New World Order with that. You're not really fighting the New World Order by continuously attacking the Bible and making that your only show. It's the Jews, 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 50 million times that, just making it your thing all day long. It's counterproductive, and show you why. My last video I showed, why don't I get into this one here? This is from Alice Bailey. This is lucistrust.org. This is the externalization of the hierarchy. This is page 551, but we're going into the 500s here, 540 something. And I want to get into this because I want people to understand as much as they can that why it's counterproductive to say that the Jews are the problem behind this New World Order. The Jews are the only issue, the only problem. Don't get me wrong before I get started here. I'm not saying there's no Jewish supremacism. These guys make a lot of good points when they're talking about that. Is there Jewish supremacism? Yes, there is. Are a lot of the Jews a part of the New World Order? Yes, they are. Is Chabad Lubavitch a dangerous cult that needs to be exposed? Yes, it does. Israel, one of the big evils behind it, what's going on? Yes, they are. So I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying it's all the Jews. And I'm going to get to that here. Okay. I'm going to show you that the Illuminati is not Judaism. This situation is one which the Christ is seeking to alter. It has been in preparation for his instituting a new and more correct presentation of divine truth that I have sought with love and understanding to point out the faults of the world religions with their obsolete theologies, their lack of love, and to indicate the evils of Judaism. The present world faith must return to their early simplicity, and Orthodox Judaism, with its deep-seated hate, must slowly disappear. All must be changed in preparation for the revelation which Christ will bring. So there you go, there's one. It's down here, sorry. I'm getting to this really quick. One of the stated goals of Alice Bailey wrote down that the hierarchy to which the Christ, she's speaking esoterically. I know that the New Agers will say Lord Maitreya, but I think that's just to dupe the masses, to consider the masses. the Christ is in office, and all the Illuminati, the members claim that they are a Christ, that they are God. So that just might, be the Christ. Sure, I mean there might be a false Messiah, but also the Brotherhood. So the Brotherhood is dedicated to the reorganization of the world religions of any way possible, so that their out-of-date theologies, narrow-minded emphasis, ridiculous belief that they know what is in the mind of God may be offset, in order that the churches may eventually be the recipients of spiritual inspiration. So changing the churches and what they teach, liberalizing them, and also teaching of one world. And we've seen that happen, so this isn't just bullshit here, we've seen that in the Vatican and with Pope Francis and stuff, and the things that he's pushing and promoting. And 2, listen to this, the gradual dissolution in any way possible of the Orthodox Jewish faith, with its obsolete teaching, its separative emphasis, hatred of the Gentiles, its failure to recognize the Christ. So, and when they're saying that, they're speaking kind of 2 ways. Yes, she may be talking about they don't recognize Jesus, but they don't believe in Orthodox Christianity, the Alice Baileys and the Illuminati. So she's also talking about the Christ as the New Age religion, which the Christ is in office, that could be held by anybody. So they don't recognize that. So that's one of the reasons why, according to her, they need to do anything possible to destroy the Jewish faith. She doesn't at the same time says here that do not fail to recognize those Jews throughout the world who acknowledge the evils, who are not orthodox in their thinking. They belong to the aristocracy of spiritual belief to which the hierarchy itself belongs, the Illuminati. So, they're working together. She admits here that they are being used, and, well, they belong to the same, they're not the hierarchy, but they're working on behalf with them. So they're working with them. So I wanted to for the New World Religion, and Judaism is not going to be a part of the New World Religion according to Lucis Trust. So that's what I wanted to get into, because you got all these people who Charles Giuliani, his YouTube channel is Christendom, and he's been doing nothing but anti-Bible rant videos, and it's understandable. I get it, and he makes some good points with child killing Yahweh, and like I said, I have many issues with that. I'm not the answer guy, but if there's one thing I do know and understand is these passages. Charles Giuliani one time had made a video talking about the fact that the Bible, the New Testament especially, places the end times in the 1st century, which on that he is correct. But he noticed he was taking this verse right here, bring those enemies of mine and slay them in front of me. He was interpreting that wrong. He was interpreting that how most of the blind church and atheists, and as most others who don't understand what the writers of the New Testament had in mind with these kind of passages, taking it out of context and placing it in some kind of a futuristic context where, according to their interpretation, Jesus is going to ride on a cloud and the whole world's going to see him. He's going to land in Jerusalem and rule the world from Jerusalem in a Christian Jewish theocracy. And they're going to have lines of unbelievers that didn't believe him, and they're going to kill them in front of Jesus. And on the surface, that would seem like, yes, that's what he's saying. Right here, verse 27 here. But I'm going to try to get whoever's watching this to understand what the purpose of this parable here, and what he's talking about. This is the parable of the minas. Now as they heard these things, he spoke another parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and because they thought the kingdom of God would appear immediately. Therefore he said, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. So he called 10 of his servants, delivered to them 10 minas, and said to them, "Do business till I come." But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, "We will not have this man to reign over us." What needs to be understood is, who are his citizens here? And who sent a delegation after him? "We will not have this man to reign over us." Well, if you read the New Testament throughout, you'll see the people who did not want the man to reign over him. It was the Jewish establishment. That needs to be understood first. It was the first century Jewish establishment that was saying, "We will not have this man to reign over us. We have no king but King Caesar." And so it was that when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants, to whom he had given the money, to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, "Master, your mina has earned 10 minas." And he said to him, "Well done, good servant, because you were faithful in a very little, have authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, "Master, your mina has earned 5 minas." Likewise he said to him, "You also be over 5 cities." Then another came, saying, "Master, here is your mina, which I have kept put away in a handkerchief. For I feared you, because you are an austere man. You collect what you did not deposit, and reap what you did not sow." And he said to him, "Out of your own mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew that I was an austere man, collecting what I did not deposit, and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank, that at my coming I might have collected it with interest?" So we know that he's talking about his return, his coming here. So it's pretty interesting that he places his coming at around this era. But anyways, and he said to those who stood by, "Take the mina from him and give it to him who has 10 minas. But they said to him, "Master, he has 10 minas. For I say to you that to everyone who has will be given, and from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. But bring here those enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, and slay them before me." So those enemies of his were the first century Jews, first century Jewish establishment that rejected him, that persecuted the prophets, that called for their arrest and whatnot, and were punished, or according to the New Testament writers who wrote the words of Jesus and the words of the Bible, the New Testament Bible, the Jews got destroyed by the Roman army in Jerusalem in AD 70 because they did not want Jesus to reign over them, and they killed him. And they persecuted and killed the prophets. This is nothing to be taken literal here. If there's any justice to this verse, and like I said, regardless, it doesn't sound like a very loving Jesus, right? Because the image you get out of that is him sitting on his throne at his coming. Bring those people, all those unbelievers, and slit their throats in front of me. I mean, that's the imagery, or whatever, execute them. So yeah, it's not a very loving verse. But it's interesting how there could, with the new explanation of this, it could, how can I put this, make it less evil and more understanding, and get people to think that, well, I'll just say this: if the preterists are correct in their interpretation of the Bible, meaning that they believe that everything was fulfilled when the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD, if there's nothing more written, and the Bible talks about this peace tabernacling with humanity, making everybody one, if they interpreted the Bible that way, they could argue that, well, he's no longer doing those kind of things. I mean, he's no longer cursing nations and then sending other nations to attack other nations, or he's not causing wrath anymore. Things are a little bit different now as they were before Christ came. You know, we're in the new covenant age now. The new covenant age is an everlasting age that never ends, and it's an age of peace, at least in the context of with God. God's no longer a wrathful Jehovah, Yahweh. He is now a merciful God who maybe accepts all his children and into the kingdom of heaven when they die. I mean, I suppose it could be possible. I mean, I don't entirely know, and that's why it's not my thing, but I'm just pointing out that when I first read this, finally, and I read all the New Testament, Matthew through Luke, and the letters of Paul, Acts, you know, I began to see the first century destruction of Jerusalem in most of these passages that the modern churches were placing into our generation. And after reading the Bible and just accepting what the New Testament writers, whoever they were, you know, wrote here, what they had in mind with what the end of the age really was about, it's not the destruction of literal heaven and earth. It's very symbolic, apocalyptic language that they used to describe the destruction of an old covenant age that honestly, unless we were living back then, we'll never fully understand, I guess. We'll never fully understand why the violence, why the this, why the that. I mean, I don't know. I don't agree with animals that we needed to kill animals to appease a wrathful Jehovah. Just like I would have never picked up a sword and slayed any children, Amalekites or anything like that. I wouldn't have it in me. Just, you know, so I see that as an evil. But again, you know, it's just one of those puzzling things that, you know, talking about an age that was like a couple thousand years ago, some shit. So, I mean, whatever. But you know, anyways, it's just counterproductive, and even with the Bible, regardless whether the Bible's evil or not, overly focusing on that and then telling people that this is the New World Order agenda, Christianity and Judaism, is counterproductive, and it helps the Illuminati in the long run because it acts as a pretty good diversion. They want to get rid of these religions as well, and you know, you can't have a free society and get rid of these while attempting to abolish these religions. It's not going to work. In a free society, you have to have freedom of religion. And it seems like these guys, like No More News and stuff, when he has this channel now called No More Religion, you're not really fighting for any kind of freedom. You're helping the argument that we need to abolish certain religions because the fact that they're, well, might be a little fanatic. But you can be a little fanatic as long as you're not hurting anybody else. As long as you're not hurting other people. Because I'll tell you this, you know, one of these days they might make a move, and just because of a few fanatics, a few fanatical Jews or a few fanatical Christians or whatever, do something, they're going to make that argument. Yep, that has to go. And that's just tyranny. And opening up the door to tyranny when we're just overly obsessing on these religions and not focusing on the agenda being of the agents of the various mystery schools and secret societies, who are, many of them are simply agents of these false religions, manipulators, deceivers. And if we keep diverting people away from that, they're going to continue on with their agenda, and people aren't going to truly wake up. Proper understanding of everything we research is important. You know, if we interpret the Bible, I mean, if you want to expose the Bible, fine, expose it, but be truthful about it. Okay, so maybe he didn't come in AD 70, but if the New Testament writers suggested and said he did with these passages, then don't take this passage out of context and give a futuristic interpretation and say the Bible writer's intention was that Jesus was going to come in some future, and this isn't talking about the Jews, this is talking about every unbeliever on the planet. No, that's a lie. That's a lie, and it's a desperate attempt to bring up everything you can to get as many people to hate the Bible as you do. And like I said, it's counterproductive. But I wanted to share that. You can do a more in-depth research yourself by just simply reading this. You know, you don't have to read everything you agree with. You know, most people think that, you know, we need to that we don't need to research things that we disagree with. I run into people like that all the time, where they're like, why are you reading occult books unless you're interested in the occult? To gain a better understanding of the subject, the occult. I read the Bible, the New Testament, so I understand what I'm talking about with these subjects. It's whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. When I do this research anyways, I'm searching for the truth of those subjects. I'm not trying to search for something to verify what I want to believe is the truth. That's a major difference there. And that's a problem with many of these. It's the Jews' disciples. And that's the problem with this religion of it's only the Jews. Is that you know, they obsess on it, and then they start taking off the attention off of the other groups that are much bigger organizations and threats to our livelihood and freedom. So, yep. Anyways, wanted to share that. Take care.